Good evening, friends. Welcome to another gripping story from The Last Clue. I hope you're all doing well. Today, we dive into a strange and mysterious tale, one that will keep you on the edge of your seat. What's the truth behind this story? Well, that's something I'll reveal at the very end. So let's begin. The world has witnessed countless aviation incidents and unexplained air mysteries, each more baffling than the last. Among these unsolved mysteries, one stands out: the story of Santiago Flight 513. This was a flight operated by Santiago Airlines, bearing the number EWA 513. On September 4, 1954, this aircraft took off from a small airport in West Germany, Aachen. At that time, Germany was divided, and West Germany had its own aviation routes. That afternoon, Flight 513 departed on what seemed like a routine journey. But what happened next turned it into one of the most baffling air mysteries in history. This flight took off from Aachen, West Germany, with its destination set for the city of Porto Alegre, Brazil. The journey was expected to take approximately 18 hours. On board were a total of 86 passengers along with 4 crew members. However, some reports suggest there were actually 88 passengers in addition to the crew. What seemed like a routine transatlantic flight soon turned into an enigma that still baffles experts to this day. This brought the total number of people on board to 92. That afternoon, Santiago Airlines Flight 513 took off from West Germany, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. The aircraft remained in contact with air traffic control, ATC, as expected. However, as it began flying over the Atlantic Ocean, something strange happened. Suddenly, all communication between the plane and ATC was lost. Without warning, the aircraft disappeared, vanishing without a trace. ATC made every possible attempt to re-establish contact, but all efforts failed. Santiago Airlines Flight 513 had completely vanished, not just from radar, but from the map itself. In such cases, it is usually assumed that the aircraft is met with an accident. Despite this, authorities immediately launch a search operation, focusing on its last known location over the Atlantic Ocean. Rescue teams from both West Germany and Brazil were deployed, working together in hopes of finding any trace of the missing flight. Several other countries also joined the search efforts, and the operation continued for an extended period. However, no trace of the plane was ever found. No wreckage, no bodies, nothing at all. As time passed, months turned into years, yet there was still no clue about what had happened to Flight 513. Speculation grew, and strange theories began to surface. One possibility was that the aircraft had crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, and its wreckage had sunk deep beneath the sea, making it impossible to locate. Given the vastness of the ocean, searching every inch was an unimaginable challenge. Various theories began to emerge, with some even linking the disappearance to mysterious phenomena similar to those of the Bermuda Triangle. However, despite countless speculations, no concrete conclusion was ever reached. The search continued, yet the plane remained missing. As time passed, Brazil conducted its own investigation, while West Germany carried out a separate inquiry, but neither effort led to any breakthroughs. Flight 513 had taken off on September 4, 1954, only to vanish without a trace. Years went by, and the mystery deepened, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions. As time went on, the investigating committee eventually released its report. Their conclusion was clear. There was no longer any hope of finding the missing plane. With no wreckage, no bodies, and no evidence of what had happened, authorities declared that Flight 513 had most likely met with an accident over the Atlantic Ocean. With no other explanation, it was assumed that all 92 people on board had perished in the mysterious disappearance. The official report concluded that all crew members and passengers aboard Flight 513 had perished. With no evidence or wreckage, authorities declared all 92 individuals dead, making it the final official statement on the case. While the investigation was formally closed, some efforts to search for the missing aircraft continued, though with little hope. Time moved on, and as the years passed, the mystery faded into history. Then, nearly 35 years later, from 1954 to 1989, something happened that no one could have ever expected. This plane was originally scheduled to land at Porto Alegre Airport in Brazil. But then 35 years later, on October 12, 1989, just after noon, something unbelievable happened. ATC at the same airport suddenly detected an unidentified aircraft in the sky. However, this plane was not responding to any communication, nor did it request permission to land. Controllers watched in shock as the mysterious aircraft continued its approach in complete silence. ATC kept its eyes fixed on a radar screen, closely monitoring the mysterious aircraft. Despite their repeated attempts to establish contact, there was no response. The plane continued its silent approach, creating a sense of panic among the controllers. The pilot wasn't responding, and at this point, expecting a reply seemed pointless. Coincidentally, the airport had multiple runways, and as ATC scrambled to figure out what was happening, the unidentified plane steadily descended, heading straight for one of them. With no response from the pilot, the approaching aircraft created a tense situation. As a precaution, the runway was cleared, allowing the plane to land without obstruction. Despite having made no contact with ATC and receiving no landing clearance, the aircraft touched down smoothly, a perfect landing, as if guided by an experienced pilot. Once it came to a complete stop, ATC wasted no time in alerting airport security and other authorities, unsure of what they were about to uncover. ATC informed airport security that an unidentified plane had landed without any communication or clearance. The fact that it touched down without ATC's assistance only added to the mystery. Now the aircraft was stationary on the runway, but no one knew who was inside or how it had arrived. Panic spread throughout the airport as officials tried to make sense of the situation. Without wasting time, security teams quickly got into their vehicles and rushed toward the mysterious plane, unsure of what they were about to discover. As security teams approached the runway where the mysterious aircraft had stopped, they got their first clear look at it. At first glance, it appeared to be a brand new plane, its exterior seemingly untouched by time. As they moved closer, they noticed something even more unsettling. The plane's engines were still running, humming steadily as if it had just completed a routine flight. But it was the third detail that truly shocked them. Written clearly on the fuselage were the words Santiago Airlines, the name of an airline that had ceased to exist decades ago. Yet, here it was, looking as if it had just rolled off the assembly line. The airport staff, well versed in aviation history, instantly realized something was terribly wrong. How could a Santiago Airlines plane land here? The airline had been defunct for over 3 decades. In fact, it had ceased operations nearly 33 years ago. The mystery deepened when they recalled that Flight 513 had vanished on September 4, 1954. 2 years after its disappearance, in 1956, Santiago Airlines itself had shut down. Yet, now in 1989, a plane bearing its name had landed as if no time had passed at all. Santiago Airlines had shut down long ago, and with it, all of its planes had been grounded. There hadn't been a single flight from this airline anywhere in the world for decades. Yet, here was one of its aircraft sitting on the runway as if it had just completed a scheduled journey. When airport security arrived, their confusion turned into fear. There was no record of Santiago Airlines still existing. It had been defunct for 33 years. Adding to the eerie scene, the plane's engines were still running, but all its doors remained tightly shut. No signs of movement, no communication, just a silent, fully intact aircraft that shouldn't even exist. The security team carefully inspected the plane from all sides, trying to make sense of its presence. As they examined it, some staff members couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness. They weren't all aware of the full story, that this very plane had taken off 35 years ago, bound for this same airport, but had never arrived. Now, out of nowhere, it had landed as if completing its long overdue journey. Realizing the gravity of the situation, more security personnel were called in. With no response from inside the aircraft, there was only one option left: to manually open the door. As tension filled the air, they prepared to step inside, unaware of what awaited them. As soon as the plane's door was forced open, senior security officers cautiously stepped inside Santiago Airlines Flight 513. But the moment they entered, they rushed back out in terror, screaming in shock. What they had just witnessed was beyond comprehension. Inside the aircraft, every passenger was still seated, their seatbelts fastened, just as they would have been during a normal flight. But there was one horrifying detail. Every single one of them had turned into skeletons. Not a single living person remained. It was as if time had passed for them, but not for the plane itself. The first officers who saw this were too shaken to speak, and when they tried to explain what they had seen, the others refused to believe them, until they too stepped inside and saw the impossible with their own eyes. Overcoming their fear, the security officers re-entered the aircraft, determined to understand what had happened. As they moved through the cabin, they inspected each seat closely. Every passenger was still in place, seatbelts fastened, but all that remained of them were skeletal remains. Counting each one, they confirmed 88 passengers, all reduced to nothing but bones. Their horror deepened as they reached the front of the plane. Just outside the cockpit, 2 flight attendants were found, both skeletons frozen in their positions as if still on duty. With trembling hands, they pushed open a cockpit door. Inside, the pilot and co-pilot were still seated at the controls. But like the others, they too were skeletons. However, the most chilling detail was yet to come. Despite being nothing but bone, the pilot's hands were still gripping the controls, as if he had just completed the landing, 35 years after the plane had disappeared. The most shocking sight of all was in the cockpit. Captain Miguel Victor Curry, the pilot of Flight 513, was still seated in his chair. But like everyone else, he was nothing more than a skeleton. Yet his bony hand remained firmly gripping the plane's control system, as if he had never let go. It was an eerie and inexplicable sight. Despite being nothing but a skeleton, he appeared to have landed the plane perfectly, his posture frozen in place as if time itself had trapped him in his final act as a pilot. The co-pilot, too, sat motionless beside him, reduced to bones yet still positioned as if guiding the aircraft. The investigators could hardly believe what they were seeing. How had this plane flown for 35 years, only to return with nothing but skeletons on board? And most disturbingly, who or what had landed it so flawlessly? As the investigation continued, security personnel thoroughly searched the plane, only to confirm the horrifying truth. Every single person on board had turned into a skeleton. Not a single living soul remained. Yet, despite this, the aircraft had landed flawlessly. The biggest mystery was the pilot. Captain Miguel Victor Curry, now just a skeleton, still had his bony hand gripping the control system, as if he had guided the plane to the ground himself. The aircraft looked brand new, its engine still running, yet it had been missing for 35 years. There had been no contact with ATC, no distress signals, just a silent return from oblivion. The question that haunted everyone was simple but terrifying. How did a plane full of skeletons land so perfectly on its own? These revelations were enough to shake even the most rational minds. The situation was beyond explanation, and the Brazilian government immediately took control. To prevent mass panic, they ensured that details of the incident did not leak to the public. Meanwhile, a full-scale investigation was launched. There were several disturbing facts that made this mystery even more baffling. First, there was no sign of an accident. If there had been, the plane wouldn't have landed so perfectly. Second, the aircraft had not landed anywhere else in all these years, as no airport had any record of it. And third, every single person on board was accounted for, but they were all skeletons, still seated as if nothing had changed, except for time itself. The most chilling question remained: How could a dead pilot land a plane with such precision? Was there something beyond human understanding at play? Could supernatural forces be involved? As speculation grew, paranormal investigators and scientists joined the efforts to uncover the truth. They searched for any logical explanation, any clue that could reveal where this plane had been for 35 years and how it had returned. The Brazilian government took the investigation seriously, keeping details hidden from the public to avoid widespread panic. Experts examined the aircraft, its instruments, and its structure, trying to determine whether it had been caught in some unknown phenomenon. But no matter how much they searched, the biggest question remained unanswered: where had Flight 513 been all this time? To prevent public panic, the investigation continued in secrecy. As experts delved deeper, a few shocking theories emerged. One of the most unsettling possibilities was time travel. Some researchers speculated that Flight 513 had somehow entered a time loop or slipped into another dimension, one where time moved differently. According to this theory, the plane had vanished from 1954 and reappeared in 1989 without its passengers ever realizing what had happened. Others believe that the aircraft had been caught in an unknown time anomaly, a mysterious force that transported it 35 years into the future. But if this was true, then why had all the passengers turned into skeletons while the plane itself remained untouched? And most disturbingly, who or what had landed it so perfectly? One theory suggested that Flight 513 had entered a time anomaly where time moved differently. On Earth, time flows at a normal pace, but if the plane was trapped in a different time dimension, a few hours there could have translated to decades in our world. According to this idea, the passengers and crew might have been exposed to intense radiation, causing them to perish and decay into skeletons while the plane itself remained unaffected. Another theory pointed toward alien intervention. Some believe that extraterrestrials had hijacked the plane, experimented on the passengers, and then returned it after decades. This could explain why the aircraft appeared brand new, as if it had never aged. However, if aliens were involved, the biggest question remained: why did they bring the plane back, and who landed it so flawlessly? The third theory suggested that Flight 513 was part of a secret human experiment, perhaps a classified test involving space, time, or other unknown forces. According to this idea, the passengers were unknowingly subjected to an experiment related to interdimensional travel or extreme conditions, leading to their deaths while the plane remained intact. However, no concrete evidence ever surfaced to support this theory. Despite all these speculations, two haunting questions remained unanswered. First, where had the plane been for 35 years? There was no trace of it anywhere. No distress signals, no sightings, nothing. And second, even if the plane had somehow returned, how did it land so perfectly without a living pilot? The mystery of Santiago Flight 513 remains unsolved, leaving behind more questions than answers. The third mystery was how all the passengers and crew had turned into skeletons while the plane itself remained untouched. And the fourth, perhaps the most puzzling, was how the aircraft managed to take off from its original location, vanish for 35 years, and then land exactly where it was originally supposed to, without any communication, assistance, or a living pilot. These questions sparked endless debates, but no definitive answers were ever found. The biggest enigma remained: how did Santiago Airlines Flight 513 and its 92 passengers disappear, only to reappear in Brazil 3.5 decades later with nothing but skeletons on board? The origin of this eerie story traces back to a journalist who first reported it in a newspaper. He was the one who initially claimed that Santiago Airlines Flight 513 had mysteriously reappeared with skeletons on board. However, there was one major flaw. He never provided any photographs of the skeletons or the passengers inside the plane. The only image he published was that of the aircraft itself. As investigations continued, doubts began to arise. It became clear that the journalist had not thoroughly cross-checked the details before publishing the story. There was no solid evidence to support his claims, leading many to question whether the entire incident was real or simply a fabricated mystery that took on a life of its own. So, the truth behind this story remains uncertain. It is neither completely true nor entirely false. The first theory suggests that the journalist fabricated the story, or, at the very least, reported it without verifying the facts. Since no physical evidence, such as photos of the skeletons, was ever presented, many believe it was nothing more than a sensationalized hoax. However, the second theory is far more mysterious. It suggests that the plane was caught in a secret phenomenon, perhaps time travel, an alien encounter, or even something similar to the Bermuda Triangle. According to this theory, the Brazilian government became highly secretive about the case, possibly to cover up something extraordinary. If this was true, then what exactly did they discover? And why was the truth never revealed? To this day, Santiago Airlines Flight 513 remains one of the most debated aviation mysteries, one with no definitive answers, only endless questions. This secrecy led to another theory that the Brazilian government deliberately kept international agencies and independent investigators away from the case. Reports suggested that many scientists opposed this decision, arguing that uncovering the truth could have been a breakthrough for science. If the plane had indeed experienced time travel or some unknown phenomenon, studying it could have revealed secrets about space, time, and physics itself. Yet, despite all these debates, the truth about those missing 35 years was never fully uncovered. After the mysterious reappearance of Flight 513 in 1989, no official explanation was ever given. Now, in 2025, it has been 36 years since the plane's return and a total of 71 years since its disappearance. But even after all these decades, the biggest question remains: what really happened to Santiago Airlines Flight 513? The mystery of Santiago Airlines Flight 513 remains unsolved to this day. People are divided into two groups. One believes that the incident is real, that the plane truly vanished and reappeared decades later with nothing but skeletons on board. The other dismisses it as nothing more than a fabricated tale, an urban legend that gained popularity over time. Yes, it is true that this plane took off from Aachen Airport in West Germany on September 4th, 1954. But beyond that, the facts remain uncertain. Did it really disappear into a time anomaly? Or was it just an exaggerated story with no real evidence? The truth remains buried in speculation, making Flight 513 one of the most chilling and debated mysteries in aviation history. Santiago Airlines Flight EWA 513 did take off, carrying 92 people, 88 passengers and 4 crew members. However, what is undeniably true is that this plane never officially landed at its destination in Brazil. It vanished over the Atlantic Ocean after losing contact with radar, and no wreckage or survivors were ever found. These are the known facts. But the claim that it mysteriously reappeared 35 years later, landing in Brazil with skeletons on board, remains unproven. There's no official record or credible evidence to support this part of the story. It continues to be one of aviation's most debated mysteries, blurring the line between fact and fiction. Even today, two versions of this story exist. One suggests that it was nothing more than a fabricated tale, an exaggerated news report published by a journalist that captured global attention. According to this version, Flight EWA 513 never reappeared, and there is no truth to the claim that it landed after 35 years. However, the other version insists that the mystery remains unsolved. If the plane never landed, then where did it go? No wreckage was ever found, and its disappearance over the Atlantic Ocean remains unexplained. And if the incredible story is true, how did it return decades later with a dead pilot still gripping the controls? Ultimately, Santiago Airlines Flight 513 remains one of the most debated aviation mysteries, one with no clear answers, only lingering questions. But there is no concrete proof. Many have tried to uncover the truth, but no definitive answers have ever emerged. In my opinion, one thing is certain. Yes, this plane did take off, and it never officially landed at its destination. These are established facts. However, the claim that it reappeared 35 years later with a dead pilot at the controls remains just a story. There is no solid evidence to support it. And without proof, this tale of a plane mysteriously landing decades later remains nothing more than an unsolved mystery, one that continues to intrigue and puzzle people to this day. This is just a story and has no connection to reality. These were the various tales surrounding this mysterious plane. There are many such stories, each with its own twists and theories, and I will share more of them with you in the future. However, one undeniable truth remains: you cannot completely dismiss the possibility of aliens, nor can you rule out the concept of time travel. While this particular story may be fictional, the mysteries of the universe continue to challenge our understanding, leaving us with more questions than answers. The mystery of the Bermuda Triangle and other unexplained phenomena cannot be completely denied. There may be connections to unknown forces, but such things are often kept hidden to prevent panic. There are countless mysteries like this, and I will bring more of them to you in the future. That's all for today. Take care, and I'll see you next time with another fascinating story. Until then, stay safe. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible mysteries. Thank you for watching. And before we go, here's a poem for you guys. In shadows deep where secrets hide, a silent whisper, a tur of tide. Footsteps echo, the truth unfolds. A story dark, yet still untold. A missing piece, a trace so slight, lost in the veil of endless night. But justice waits, it calls to you. The chase won't end till the last clue.